The White Citizen Council came about as a result of the Brown versus the Board of Education decision on desegregating public schools. There were a group of white men in Indianola who met there in Indianola and decided to form an organization to do everything within their power to stop the school integration. So White Citizens Council organized in Indianola and spread across the South very rapidly because of the fear of black and white children going into the same schools.
So the White Citizens Council was called by several journalists, including Harding Carter, as the Uptown Klan. What did they mean by that? And Dr. Hart wanted you to mention the word Uptown Klan in your answer.
Uptown Klan meant that these were business people, lawyers, doctors, people, upstanding people in the community. And they people who wore the suits and who were the fathers of the community, church people, and people who could have the people could be in office and looking good publicly, and then doing whatever dirty racist deeds that they wanted. In fact, they were the people behind the real Ku Klux Klan, the people who the business people used the less educated and less sophisticated white people to do the dirty work. They were the leaders undercover.
They was the leaders undercover. So can you explain that a little bit more? How they got the less educated people to do their dirty work? So was that the original Klan, and then the White Citizens Council was the Uptown Klan? Do you know, or can you point out any differences between the regular uneducated Klan and the White Citizens Council being the Uptown sophisticated Klan?
Yeah, the lesser educated white people, the Uptown Klan, the business, who were the business people, could easily instill fear in the lesser educated whites that the blacks are going to take your job. They get educated, you're the one you're going to lose. You have more to lose, so you've got to help protect your way of life, protect our way of life with so that by doing those things necessary to make sure that we don't allow them to get the kind of education that make them feel more less inferior and more superior.
So the White Citizens Council, what was some of the reach that they had that they could enforce? Since they wasn't the type of Klan that was wearing the sheets, they were kind of behind these businesses or closed doors. Well, what kind of rules could they enforce that could totally mess up the lives of a black person in town?
Well, they ran the banks, and so they controlled the money. They controlled the food, the grocery stores. They controlled, they owned the automobile dealerships, and they more economic pressure on the black community. They had the power to deny blacks opportunities for economic advancement. And they used it. They would cut off the credit for African Americans, and even used that same kind of pressure on poor white people to make sure they stayed in line. And when they got to the point where that wasn't necessary, they would be behind really the violence that the less educated white people would do in the community. So they used the economic pressure up at the top level, and they used intimidation and violence at the lower level.
Very interesting. So could you, I don't know if you know, but could you tell me of a typical, even if you kind of made it up, a typical situation where someone would register to vote, now their name is in the paper, and now they go to the bank, and next thing you know, did the people know this was the White Citizens Council, or was the White Citizens Council just not even a name back then? And then so next thing you know, they come and it's like, oh, well, you can't get this loan, or you gotta blah, blah, blah. Even if it's hypothetical.
I think that people knew that the White Citizens Council exists. Fannie Lou Hamer talked about, the White Citizens Council and the kind of thing, and she was a typical example of the kind of pressure that the White Citizen Council exerted. She went to the courthouse, made an attempt to register to vote, made an application. The registrar at the county courthouse called the plantation owner and told him that Fannie Lou Hamer and other blacks were over there trying to register to vote. They passed the word around, and several black people faced pressure. I remember Reverend Jeff Cerny was a little minister here in Ruleville, lived out on the plantation, and he talked about how he made certain number of bales of cotton, and he and his family, and they took it from him, and that they cut off his food at his credit for getting food at the local grocery store, and they took away his old car. So Jeff Cerny was one of the people who came out in the early days as a part of our movement here, and he and his family really suffered as a result of it. They put him off the place, and in fact he left town for a while. It was our movement that brought him back to Ruleville, and he and his family lived here until he passed away, but he never was able to really get another foothold. There was a here in Ruleville there were several black farmers like Mr. Miles Foster and George Jordan and Otis Foster, and these people, they worked a little land. They had a kind of a little piece of land that they worked, and they would make their own crops. And when they became involved in the movement, their credit was cut off. They were not allowed to, to get the money from the banks and everything to do the kind of work to take care of their farms. So a lot of economic pressure was brought on blacks from the upper class, and when that didn't work, they turned it over to the lower class, and that's when the violence and the murder would take place. Now here's a little lady right here, Sally Mae Carton. Sally Mae Carton lived on a plantation near here, and she got involved in the movement. We took her down to register to vote. about the same time, that period that Fannie Lou Hamer did. And she had to leave the plantation. And I remember her coming to Fannie Lou Hamer's house numerous times, telling her story, but her story never did make the kind of news that Fannie Lou's did. Fannie Lou Hamer later gave her a piece of property and allowed her to build a home on it, and so that because she didn't have any place else to go. That piece of property, in fact, a relative of Sally Mae Carthen's is living on the land that Fannie Lou gave that family.
Really?
Yeah. And he's involved in the Fannie Lou Hamer effort here now. See, Fannie Lou Hamer bought several pieces of property with that Freedom Farm Cooperative, and she gave the land away to people. You know, people who had been victims who had been kicked off of the plantation. And she gave Sally Mae Carthen a lot. One of the lots that she bought.
Really? Let's see. So did you answer why do you think the movement, the WCC, the White Citizens Council movement, started in Indianola in 1954 specifically?
Really, I don't know why it started in Indianola, except that in this county we had Senator Eastland, the big planter. His family historically had been involved in the murder, burning, lynching, whatever you want to call it, of a black man and a woman in Dodgeville. And in reading the story, the sheriff from Indianola, from Sunflower County, couldn't and didn't do nothing about it. I think a lot of it may have had to do with the fact that there were in this mid-delta, the White Citizens Council wanted to maintain basic control over African Americans, and they had the leadership of a person like the Eastland family and other plantation owners. And other than that, I don't know specifically why Sunflower County was chosen, except I think that it's the location of that county seat and the fact that this mid-delta had the large number of African American slaves and sharecroppers. Somewhere I read that between LaFleur County, Sunflower, especially Greenwood, about 1/3 of the population of the area was very heavily African Americans, and that most of the economy of the Delta kind of centered around Greenwood, Indianola, Greenville, Clarksdale, and so that may have had something to do with it.
Thank you. So what about, I'm wondering now, because Freedom Summer was in 1964, and it says here that the White Citizens Council was formed in 1952. So were they were just around for that long, or was also voter registration going on for that long, or was it something else before, right around that time?
No, well, the voter registration effort, the real voter registration effort here in Sunflower County picked up around 62. We started here in 62. The Citizens Council came about as a result of integration, the fear of integration. So that movement, that integration movement with the NAACP started early, and the voter registration effort that that started around that we brought in '62 centered around trying to get African Americans registered in order for protection and for change, to bring about changes for African Americans in the state of Mississippi through voting. But the White Citizens Council main aim was to make sure integration didn't take place.
Thank you. All right, hold on. RJ, we're going to go get one of the lights. That way we can just put it right here. You good? Okay, let's see. So you basically explained to how they were pressuring whites and blacks that were sympathetic to the movement by canceling stuff. Okay, so do you know of any pushback on the whites as well from the White Citizens Council, or was it just the black threatening black folks?
I'm trying to think of any instance where...
Maybe you answered the question already, but Dr. Houck's question was how did the WCC pressure whites and blacks sympathetic to the movement? I think you answered it already, though. If you want to answer it a different way, that's fine. How did they pressure whites and blacks?
Well, it was mostly economic pressure, on both blacks and whites. The economic pressure would come where, for instance, any white person that act sympathetic toward blacks were branded a nigger lover, and would automatically then have pressure, probably get a call from the banker, get a call from the lawyer or something in the town, or neighboring plantation owners, put pressure on each other. I don't know of an instance where a white person, say, stood up on behalf of a black or blacks, and something happened to them as a result of that. I was trying to think of I remember a little, what you could call backlash, after Fannie Lou Hamer passed away. No, this was Fannie Lou Hamer got sick, and we did a program for her, and I asked her, at that time, Ruleville had a female mayor, Dr. Virginia Talbert, was a white lady who became the mayor of Ruleville. And I asked her to establish a Ruleville, Fannie Lou Hamer Day in Ruleville. Fannie Lou was sick and had become a very popular person. And this lady said that Fannie Lou Hamer was one of the most important women in Sunflower County. This white lady who's the mayor. And I think there was a little pressure, exerted on her about that. from talk that I heard. But she did declare Fannie Lou Hamer Day here in Ruleville. And I wrote the resolution and gave it to her, and she approved it and signed it. And I've got a copy of that we can see.
Nice sign language. Okay, so what was the Freedom Vote and how did it lead to Freedom Summit?
Well, the Freedom Vote came about as a result of African Americans being denied the right to participate in the democratic process, to, in the Deep South and especially here in Mississippi, the Democratic Party ran everything. We, as we started to organize the movement and started to take people to register to vote, and tried to participate in the political process by attending precinct meetings and caucuses and just trying to be a part of the democratic process, and we were denied. And so we were having very little luck registering blacks to vote because of the literacy tests and poll taxes and intimidation and violence. So we decided that what we will do is to stop worrying about taking people to the courthouse and going through the stress of trying to get them to pass that literacy test. That what we would do was keep taking people to the courthouse, but at the same time we would set up our own political system by setting up voter registration form, our own form, and then holding mock elections. The whole aim was to educate African Americans about the importance of registering and voting. Most of the African American people in the 60s had not been involved in politics for over 100 years. 100 years had passed. So we decided that what we would do, we would run candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, and then we would run candidates for 3 of the 5 congressional districts. So we went about setting up our forms, setting up our precincts, and we ran Aaron E. Henry, who was president of the NAACP, and we ran Reverend Ed King, a white college professor at Tuvalu College, as lieutenant governor. And we ran Fannie Lou Hamer in the 2nd Congressional District, Victoria Gray in the 5th Congressional District, and Anna Devine in the 4th. And we used those mock elections to get people voting in our election. We set up precincts in churches, juke joints, on the corners, Saturday, wherever people gathered. We registered them with us. We had our registration form, and certainly we didn't have nothing on there about no literacy test. I think we had about 6 or 8 questions on a form that basically dealt with just basic information about a person, where they live, age, and address, and stuff like that. So out of that election, that mock election, we accumulated over 80 to 90,000 participants in our election, and we used that data, that information, to during Freedom Summer, when we brought in the more than 1,000 young people and other professionals into Mississippi to help us continue our voter registration effort and to set up freedom schools and community centers and to organize the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. So the data and information that we had gained during the mock election, we used to bring to Atlantic City in 1964 when we set forth to challenge the regular Mississippi racist Democratic Party here in the state of Mississippi with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
And I don't know if you answered this, but you can try to answer it short again. If maybe, I don't know. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was formed in April 1964. What were its aims? I think you kind of answered that, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the aim of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was to challenge the regular Democratic Party in Mississippi and to open up the Democratic Party to participation to African Americans in the state.
Why did so many SNCC not want white college kids to come to Mississippi? How did Moses manage to win the debate?
Well, since I was one of the people who at first was against bringing in a lot of the white kids, and was because what we were doing, we were working in the black community and we were trying to help black people overcome their fear, their reluctance to challenge white people. But also that the white supremacy thing was there. If we're trying to get them to not accept the white supremacy, and then we're going to bring in a bunch of young, better educated young people, and we're going to put them in the black people's community, in the homes with them. And my fear was that they would continue to feel even more inferior to these people, and certainly because of their better education, they would look up to them. Of course, just the opposite happened in my case. I think in the end, the white people played a very significant role in helping to move the movement forward. I had several of the young white people and whom I worked with very closely, and I watched how they got involved with the community, how they got involved with the people that they lived in the homes with. They were teaching some of their kids all the time about reading, writing. They helped purchase toys and books for the children. And I was really surprised one day to find one of the young white kids on my project with a carload of little black children all around her, and the kind of care that they seem to, that these young people seem to put forth for the for the African Americans that they live with. I even watched Tracy Sugarman, who was an illustrated artist and did a lot of drawings and writing about the movement. He lived with a black lady, Rennie Williams, and her husband. And one day I was driving through town, and I noticed Tracy Sugarman, the white volunteer, coming out of the grocery store with 2 bags in his arms, and the black lady that he's living with and her granddaughter by his side carrying bags, to his car and bringing them back home. And for these kids to show up at the mass meeting, walking the community to the mass meeting with the people that they were living with and sitting down at the table eating with them. So this had never happened, and I think this had an effect on the effect of helping the African Americans to overcome their hesitance to feel, good around these people. And actually, in the end, it did a lot of good. The young people, the Freedom Summer Project was very successful, I believe, in making possible a lot of the changes that we have today.
Good answer. Thank you. So is that how Moses managed to win the debate? Was there a debate going back and forth with Moses, and did he have a quick, short answer for it or something? Or no?
Well, yeah, there was debate. There were 3 or 4 other, I don't know how many, but there were several other people, and certainly Charlie Cobbs was one of them, one of the SNCC people who also had some hesitancy about it, and I'm sure Charlie explained that the way, but but Fannie Lou Hamer, I think, while Bob Moses insisted on doing it, Fannie Lou Hamer was one of his strongest supporters. Fannie Lou Hamer immediately came out in support of Freedom Summer. She of bringing the young people in. In fact, she challenged Charlie, and she just told me it was going to happen. Fannie Lou and I were very close friends, and she told me that Freedom Summer was going to take place. And in fact, her home was the central point for the arrival of all of the Freedom Summer people who came to Sunflower County. So between Bob Moses and Fannie Lou Hamer and others, I'm sure like Victoria Gray, Annie Devine, and these people who saw the significance of bringing the young people in, that they won out. Bob won got his project.
Thank you. Do you remember where you were when you learned that Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney went missing? And did you know they were already dead? Let's wait for them to... Yeah, so the question again is, do you remember where you were when you learned Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney went missing? And did you know they were already dead?
I was in Oxford, Ohio for the training. That they were killed. They became missing during the training for the Freedom Summer volunteers at Oxford, Ohio, and that's where I was when I learned about it. I suspected that they were dead or that they would be killed if they weren't already killed. When the word came that they were missing, and that that the FBI and other law enforcement agencies were headed to Mississippi in search of them. And after several days, I think all of us just kind of knew that they were dead. But that was I was up there for training when that happened.
Lawrence Guillot had said, I don't know who knows this, that the death of the 3 men actually protected workers that summer. And how do you feel about that statement? And was it because of the federal government's presence?
Yeah, well, I do believe that the death of the 3 civil rights workers did bring the kind of attention on Mississippi that was necessary. However, nobody wished death on anyone, and especially on those young kids. But it happened, and it did open up. The news media immediately came in. There was the FBI, Justice Department, even the President of the United States got involved in that situation in terms of bringing pressure to bear on the location of those three guys. So I personally would not have wished it on anyone, but since it happened, it did do what a lot of us were thinking, and that was if you bring the white people, young whites in, that their families will follow them, that the power of their families, the Congress, these people, white kids had representatives in government, local and state and federal, and that death did bring about the kind of attention that offered immediate protection to African Americans as well as other white people. You know, I think Lawrence Key just kind of expressed what many of us felt. And that we wouldn't have wished it on anyone, but since it happened, it got us what we wanted, some focus on Mississippi.
Thank you. So the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party rejected the compromise offered by Johnson's administration. Do you recall why? And were you in the room when Ms. Hamer famously said, "We didn't come all this way for no 2 seats"?
I was in the Credentials Committee room when she spoke. Of course, you know, I think that when the compromise was offered, Lyndon Johnson was kind of with his back against the wall. He didn't want to offend what he felt was his Southern base, and at the same time, he didn't want to come out for the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party because he also needed black votes in the North. So the compromise was an attempt to appease the leadership at both the national and the South, at the Southern level. He did so that the Dixiecrats, the white Democrats were Dixiecrats and were not really representatives of the Democratic Party, but they had Democratic patronage and so forth down here. So Johnson had his, Hubert Humphrey and Mondale, who was senators, and Humphrey wanted to be vice president, so he had them offer us a compromise and as delegates for the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And it was rejected because really it was nothing. I mean, 2 seats at large, not 2 seats in the Mississippi delegation. These are 2 seats just kind of in the limbo and with no power. Our objective in the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was to change the Democratic Party in Mississippi.
Okay, that same thought, that same sentence you were just on?
Our objective with the Freedom Democratic Party was to make changes in Mississippi and to accept what they were calling 2 seats wasn't going to do anything. We would have left there, came back to Mississippi, and the same thing would have been in existence. So we rejected it because it didn't offer anything. It didn't offer, and then Lyndon Johnson was going to name the 2 people who would occupy those 2 seats. It wasn't going to even give an opportunity to Fannie Lou Hamer and others in the delegation. So it was nothing, and we didn't see it as being any way that it was going to help us back home.
Okay. So no, that was a good, you finished that answer. I hope we didn't mess it up. But so were you there when she famously, I think you said yeah, but what was that like? Was it was it a surprise, or where were you, and how do you, like, what are some of the details maybe?
Well, the statement about the 2 seats, I don't remember that during her testimony. The last thing she said there was that that if the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was not seated, then she challenged the America. Of course, that thing about 2 seats came later, during a press conference after she had testified before the Credentials Committee, where she was talking to the press and said, if you recall, in the convention, our people got into the convention by other delegations from the North allowing our people to use their passes. And when the regular Democratic Party, Mississippi Democratic Party delegation left the convention, then our people occupied those seats. And that was where I think during that time that Fannie Lou Hamer got a chance to talk to the press. There was a period where she and Aaron Henry and Ella Baker and Bob Moses and others were meeting the press, and where she made the statement that we didn't come all this way for no 2 seats since we all are tired, sick and tired.
Thank you. So we got to change this battery, but we might have enough for this. Just 1 or 2 more questions. What did the MFDP want with Atlantic City?
In Atlantic City, we wanted to open up Mississippi. Mississippi had long been considered the closed society, that anything that came in never got out. So our aim was to open up Mississippi to the rest of the world, and to make changes in the lives of the African Americans here in the state.
Okay. And do you remember any of the rules you had for the white students on your particular project in the summer of 1964? Any of the rules that you were kind of warning them and breaking down to them before everything got started?
Yeah. One was that we were to
So can you say some of the rules that kind of started with the question?
Okay. Few of the rules that, once the young people came, few of the rules that we established immediately was that, one, to stay within the black community. The other was to not be seen, downtown or any place with acting, holding hands and things like.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is dead.
One was that they stay together as much as possible and stay within the black community. And anytime they were to venture outside to report it to, we had a headquarters, a freedom school that functioned as our headquarters, office, library, and so with telephone and everything there, and everybody had the number of the freedom school, and that we also wanted to make sure that they never ventured. In other words, that never let anybody take them outside of the community without approval. But just a few basic rules, because Proveville was a small community, and we considered to have had it real tight, and most of the there were really three separate communities that made up Ruleville, and this area in here was called the Sanctified Quarters, and all the way to the highway. And then it had the Jerusalem Quarters, which was a church community in itself. And then we had the Cross Town, and that was over across the downtown area. These were three areas where the African American community exists. And so we had our people confined to the Sanctified Quarters, and to go outside of the Sanctified Quarters into any other section of the community, they had to report to the office prior to leaving.
Okay, right before we cut you off, last time you were almost about to mention not to be holding hand or showing any. What was that all about? That rule?
Yeah, we didn't want especially with the young boys and girls holding hands, walking, even in the black community. So that was in order to make sure that we didn't encourage any of those racist whites, to get upset because of the white girls and the black guys, being too chummy.
Was there any talk of that? Did you hear of any that being some of the worries of the neighbors saying, "Oh, they in there, they must be in there having sex"?
Well, certainly the white community, certain elements of the white community felt that way because there was kind of just floating around in the community, and at the courthouse one day in Indianola. Some of the whites who were standing around, and the black and the whites were there resident, and you could hear a white person say, "I wonder what do they do at night? What are they doing at night?" I heard that statement several times when we were at the courthouse or standing around. Say in my case, I'd go to the bank or go to the grocery store somewhere, and they say, "Yeah, that's one of them right there." And say, "Well, which one of them white women is he? Which one of them is that nigga's girlfriend?" Something like that.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so we're almost wrapping up, and then we just wanted to know over there about the systems. But question for Mac about the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. What was the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission, or why was it created in the first place, and what was its mission?
The Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission was a watchdog agency created by the legislature to keep an eye on civil rights leaders and to report civil rights activity in the state. It was really an investigative body. Providing information to the legislature and to the Klan.
So the Mississippi State Sovereign Committee, were they different from the White Citizens Council, and
Yeah.
were they both kind of created for the same type of purpose, similar, or?
The difference was that the Sovereignty Commission was created by legislation, state legislation, and funded. The Ku Klux Klan was not funded, and it was not created by an act of the legislature. While the Ku Klux Klan was more of a violent and intimidating force, the Sovereignty Commission was more of an investigative watchdog, watching what was going on and making reports that was probably handed to the Ku Klux Klan.
Thank you. I really want them to turn that music off. They are listening to.
Oh yeah, we knew there were people who carried information back to the white community. Yeah, and we, in fact, sometimes we made sure we said things that we wanted to get back to them. Yeah, most of the people in the community knew who they were. You know, even some of what I considered to be, you know, friends. And they would come around, be with us, talk with us, you know, listen, try to find out what's going on. And then they would go back and tell the white people what we're planning if we do. But most of the time, what I always tried to stay in tight with the community, and not be as conspicuous as I tried to be as inconspicuous as possible, but at the same time to work closely with the people that I was working with, so that any information that got out, it was meant to improve, to help me, to help, you know, our movement. And I guess it might be a brag, but that was one of the reasons that I think I had less trouble than a lot of other people had in their communities, in the communities where they were working, other leaders, was because I kept everything in tight, and I sent out that information that I wanted, you know, to get out.
Thank you. Did you know you were being targeted, and how did you know? If so, have you ever seen your file?
I've seen my file, but I know I was targeted for about a month in 1963, I believe, 63, 64. I was followed by an investigator for the Sovereignty Commission. I was followed around everywhere I went. There was this white man in a suit following me in his car. When I would stop at places, he'd stop, say, 100 yards back, and he'd get out on the, and sometimes sit on the hood when I'm talking to people. And I knew he was there. But then I decided to get him off my back I went to the sheriff of Sunflower County. Hollowell was the sheriff here, white sheriff. And I asked for a permit to carry a gun. And I told him why, and I was being followed by this white man, and that and I thought he had planned to do something to me, and I needed a gun. And I wanted a permit so that I could get a gun. And he told me to, don't worry about it. You don't need a permit. Everything will be all right. After that, I never saw the guy again. And but then I knew I was still followed, because one of the times I was in Indianola, and I went to see the mayor of Indianola. And when I came out of the office, there were two white men standing over near the courthouse. And when I got in my car, they got in their car. And they followed me almost to a little town called Shaw. I was going out 442. I took the left going west, and they went to the right. But anyway, and then since when the lawsuit was won, opening up the Sovereignty Commission records, I received from one of my friends a report that was in the Sovereignty Commission's file. In fact, I think maybe I sent that file to Obi, or it's in my at the house. But yeah, I became conscious of them following me, and I thought I'd do something about it.
So why was the Sovereignty Commission and the Citizens Council eager to portray you guys and your workers as communists?
Well, the word communist was really a bad word back in the day. To brand a person a communist meant that you were anti-American, that you really wasn't for what you claimed that you were doing. You're plotting to overthrow the government, that you don't have a loyalty to the country, and that could inflame some people, and it would turn off a lot of African Americans who didn't really know what a communist was, or the fact that somebody said, well, they are anti-American, and so it was a means of it's intimidation, as well as a means of branding a person, so that the community would kind of ostracize them.